Hello, everybody. This is Jared with Financially Abundant Life, and today I'm really excited to share with you the 4 methods needed to help you create new thoughts. Now, if you missed my last video, that's where we explained that our results are directly tied to our thoughts. If you missed it, no worries. I'll link to it in the notes below, but I'm also going to give you a paragliding metaphor. I did all of my flying and instructions at Poo-Poo Point on Tiger Mountain. Now, Tiger Mountain is located in the small city of Issaquah, Washington, which is about 30 minutes east of Seattle. And if you're standing on launch, you're going to notice that to the right of launch is a grove of trees about 400 or 500 feet off. And to the left of launch, you can see the city of Issaquah followed by Lake Sammamish. It's a beautiful view. When we launch a student, obviously we want them to avoid the trees and go off and have an enjoyable flight. Well, sometimes these students just get focused on those trees, and it's our job to guide them away from the trees. The only tool that we have once they leave the ground is our words. And so we have to give very accurate verbiage that they can use and act on. When we first started helping students and they were flying towards the trees, we used to say, break left and go left. But we noticed that that didn't always work. So one day when we were sitting around dinner after flying, we started talking about this and we started wondering what's some better verbiage we can give them. And Mark Chirico, the lead instructor out there, he came up with the idea of let's give them the thought that look at the lake and go to the lake. Now, as you can see in this picture, obviously Lake Sammamish is a very predominant feature out there. And it's much easier to understand look at the lake than it is break left. In fact, most students, when they haven't really been paragliding, what does break left even mean, right? So Mark changed the verbiage and he started to say, look at the lake and go to the lake. And it was amazing how effective this is. Just the mere fact of turning their head slightly, just a little bit to look at that lake, changed their whole body position, weighted the glider such that it naturally veered off towards the lake and things worked well. Now, that is the perfect analogy to how our thoughts determine our results, okay? In this example, their thoughts were, look at the lake and go to the lake, and they went to the lake. It's the same with our own financial thoughts. If we're always thinking, I'm never going to be able to get out of debt, I'm never going to be able to make more money, I never have enough money to pay my bills, then that's exactly where we're going to stay. Okay, I'm not going to talk about that a whole lot more because I talk about it pretty extensively in my last video. Again, I'll link to it in the notes below. Go check that out if you really want some more information about how our results come from our thoughts. Today's video is going to focus on the 5 methods needed to help us create new thoughts. The first step is to differentiate your thoughts from facts. And I'm going to twist that word facts just a little bit on you, and I'm going to change it to the word circumstances, okay? So if that doesn't make sense for you right now, just know that circumstances also mean facts. Now, you may be thinking this is kind of crazy and stupid. I know the difference between my own thought and my own circumstance, but I'm going to tell you, you probably don't. So let me define a circumstance here for you to help you understand what those are. A circumstance has 2 components. One, they are provable in a court of law, and or there's something that everyone would agree upon. So let me give you an example here. Let's say a friend comes to you and says, hey, don't forget you still owe me that $130. You're like, oh yeah, right, okay. So you log into your Venmo account, you're gonna Venmo him the $130 and you realize, oh, actually you only have $30. What's the first thought that comes to mind there? It's probably, I don't have enough money to pay this guy. And that may feel like a fact or a circumstance to you, but it's not. That's just a thought. Now, you may be thinking, how's that just a thought? You know, I owe this guy $130 and I only have 30 in the account, so how am I supposed to pay him? Well, your friend, maybe he's been reminding you for several months here, okay? He's probably going to be creative and come up with several other ideas. He's like, hey, you just bought a brand new computer. Why don't you sell your old computer? Or why don't you go borrow it from your sister? She's loaded. Or why don't you draw it out of your savings account? I know you've got money in there. You see how he's automatically thinking of different ways that you could pay that bill, right? Or pay him back? So that is just a thought. The more you concentrate on differentiating your thoughts from your circumstances, the more you'll start to realize that what you think is a circumstance is really just a thought. Okay, step number 2 is allowing your thoughts. Now, that may seem counterintuitive if we're trying to create new thoughts here, but we don't want to resist our current thoughts. If we go back to that previous example, it feels like a fact to us. It feels like a circumstance to us. And if we resist it and we try and just push it out, our brain is going to fight that. The very famous psychologist Carl Jung once famously said, "What we resist not only persists, but grows in size." Now, obviously, in creating new thoughts, we don't want our old thoughts to grow in size, and so we need to allow them. To me, allowing a thought is just simply sitting with it and sort of verbalizing it to this quote-unquote imaginary friend in my head that, oh, I had the thought of X. So if we go back to our last example, we may just say, oh, interesting, I just had the thought that I don't have enough money to pay my friend back. But that is just a thought. And just sitting there and just feeling how it feels and just letting it dwell there for a little bit. Now, the third step is understanding why we're thinking these thoughts. Now, if we go back to the previous example, that may seem pretty obvious to us. Well, I owe somebody $130. I only have $30, so I'm $100 short, okay? But what we may want to stop is ask, why am I really thinking this thought? And in that case, it's probably because I've only ever considered paying my bills out of this one account. I haven't ever considered other methods. Maybe I could work a little bit more. Maybe I could sell things. Maybe I could borrow things. Maybe I could draw from another account. Sometimes when I'm trying to understand why am I thinking this thought, it's not always clear to me and I can't find the answer. So the question that I ask myself that really helps me understand that is, why am I choosing to think this thought? And that word choosing feels a little quote unquote loaded in my mind, right? It helps my brain understand that, hey, this isn't a circumstance. It's something that you're choosing to think. And by asking this and analyzing it and understanding why we're thinking this thought really helps us with the next step. And the next step is trying on alternative thoughts. Now, there's a key to this. These alternative thoughts have to be believable, okay? You can't just all of a sudden think, oh, well, okay, I only have $30 in my account, but I'm going to be able to pay this. Your mind may kind of freak out on you a little bit and just say, no, we don't have the money to pay that, or I just can't believe it. Let's take a broader example. Maybe you've been in debt for the last, 20 years of your life, and you just wake up one day and just say, I'm going to get out of debt. Your brain may just resist that too much. I use the analogy of clothes shopping. Let's assume that you go to a department store because you need a new shirt, and you walk in and you see this shirt that is just ugly. You're like, oh my gosh, why are they even selling that? Who would buy that thing? Okay, that's sort of synonymous with a thought that is just way out there, completely unbelievable. You can't ever do that. That's maybe the thing that I'm going to get out of debt. Maybe that's just too much of a stretch. You see another shirt, you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. I kind of like that. You take it, you go try it on, and the cut just isn't right. It doesn't fit you well, and so you put it back. That's kind of akin to the thought that, well, you like it, but you just can't believe that. It doesn't fit quite right. Maybe that's along the lines of, well, I'm going to get out of debt in 2 years. You want to believe that, but maybe you just don't believe it. It sounds too aggressive. Okay, so let's go to the last example here. Is you find a shirt, you go, you try it on. It fits you well. It makes you look good. You feel good in it. This is the shirt, and you go and you buy it. That's akin to the thought that you believe and that you like. And in going back to our debt case, maybe that's the, yeah, I'm in debt now, but I am working to pay off my debt, and I am going to get there someday. Okay, the last step is to be patient. Professionals think that we have between 60 and 80 thoughts a day. That's a lot of thoughts. Now, not all of those are about finance, but that's a lot of thoughts. And we've had so many thoughts for so long, kind of going back to our original example there, that we sort of believe these thoughts as facts or as circumstances in our lives. So we have to slowly retrain our brain by going through these 4 steps and by going through these processes. And those original thoughts will slowly start to crumble away. But the more embedded those thoughts are in our mind and the more they feel like a circumstance, the longer they're going to take to change. So to help you with that, let me kind of give you the 4 steps of change so that you don't think that I'm just never getting where, but you'll start to recognize this process. Okay, the first step is doubt. You doubt whether this is really just a thought versus a circumstance, and you doubt whether you can change these thoughts or not. The second is consideration. You can kind of consider that, yeah, maybe this just is a thought, and maybe I could start to think different thoughts. The next step is belief. You start to believe that there are new thoughts out there and that you can believe these new thoughts and that you are going to get better results. Now, I want to give you a little caution in this step. Once you get to the belief step, you start to resist those other thoughts a little bit easier. You'll think your original thought, you'll immediately recognize it and think, no, I want to think a different thought. And so you're going to resist that first thought. And remember, we don't want to resist our thoughts. We want to allow them. We don't want to, what we resist persists and grows. Remember that? We just want to allow them. That's part of one of the stages there. So when you're in the belief stage, be careful that you don't go to resistance. And the fourth step of progression is new thoughts. All right. You are going to have new thoughts. They're going to come to you very easily. When you have old thoughts, they're easily replaceable. In fact, after a while, you'll go back and you'll look at your old thoughts and you'll realize how destructive those were and how they weren't serving you. And you'll start to wonder, how could I even have thought those thoughts? That's just not true. And isn't that interesting? You've come completely full circle because you were originally thinking, no, this is true. There's no other way that I can think something else. This is just the fact of my life. Okay, those are the 4 steps you need to create new thoughts. And as you create new thoughts, you will create new financial results. I have a podcast which talks about everything we've discussed in this video, but talks about them in greater detail and gives several more examples. If you feel that would be more helpful, please subscribe. I'll put a link in the notes. Also, please subscribe to this channel so that you can be sure to get my future videos there. If you're interested in working with me one-on-one, I would love that opportunity. My method is to help you become financially abundant by understanding the math side of money and the mental side of money. Kind of what we talked about today. By changing our thoughts, we create different results. Now, I'm going to help you with all the numbers, set up a budget and get you on that. But living on a budget, it comes from the mental side. Okay, everybody, that's the video for today. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll talk to you next week.